everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Steve Morey.
And unfortunately, we don't have brother Bryan with us. He had a bit of a scheduling conflict, but his presence will be felt in this episode. And we have to apologize to you folks. We did not intend to become a monthly podcast during the summer months. But real life, shit's getting us down. And just be forewarned, this episode will probably be much more stream of consciousness than our usual highly professionally crafted episodes. But there's a lot going on. Steve, I know on the last episode we talked that you were in the planning stages for a move, and you have moved.
I have. We actually, my husband and I just spent this past weekend, packing up everything in our Charlotte house, and then moving to the house in Winston-Salem. So the problem, though, that I'm having, and I'm sure a lot of listeners also have if they have been reading comics for a while, is moving all of their long boxes and short boxes, now trying to figure out where they need to go. Because I don't think I have enough storage space compared to my last house. And even then, I was short on storage space, too. So, we'll see what happens.
Me and have a comic bunker.
I could have a comic bunker. We don't live too far from several use store it units, so might have to take that step. I'm, hoping I don't have to just yet. I might be able to make some furniture out of these short boxes, let's just say.
Well, I do know that if you got into my comic book bunker, you could make 2 forts out of the long boxes.
Do you know that from experience?
From sheer number and my vivid imagination, I guess. No, I have never created a fort from.
I'm just picturing like you and somebody else just like, okay, this is my fort, that's your fort, and then just like, I don't know, hauling Funko Pops at each other.
Oh my god, I actually opened a Funko Pop box for the first time. I know,
Gasp.
the gay gasp. I wanted to have a good luck charm from my beloved Green Bay Packers, so I took out my Toys R Us exclusive Acme Packer Aaron Rodgers Funko Pop, and we won our season opener, and we lost our second game, which was the Sunday Night Football game last week, to the Atlanta Falcons, who took us out of the playoffs last year. And I didn't have that vinyl pop anywhere near myself. I totally forgot about it. Little Aaron Rodgers in the Acme Packer outfit is coming back out this Sunday because maybe he is a good luck charm at this point. So
it's possible.
Yeah,
it is possible.
Throwing Funkos. My visual of that is pretty cool.
Whipping a large-headed vinyl figure at somebody else's head. That's it's dangerous, but also kind of fun.
Okay, so in regards to why I have contributed to being a relative non-presence in the interwebs worlds over the last few months, in mid-July, I strained and sprained various ligaments in my right foot, which required wearing a boot for a time and then taking off the boot, and the necessity dictated I had to put the boot back on. It's not been fun. I think I'm very close to healed. There's one pain point that just doesn't seem to be going away. But because of this complication, though I am walking much better and unassisted and all that, I decided to cancel my trip to Baltimore Comic Con. Now, Steve had already canceled his plans for Baltimore Comic Con because of the complexities involved with the move and when he actually closed on his house. I hope I don't mind talking to you there.
That's fine.
And, it was something we were really looking forward to. And come midday Friday, we're actually recording this on Thursday night, the 21st, midday on the 22nd, which normally would be the time that I'm going in for the press pass and checking in. It's going to be a little rough. It's been 8 years that I've enjoyed this con. Unfortunately, there were also a number of people I know that I would be seeing that weren't going to this particular con this year, so we'll have a virtual con somehow or something over the weekend. We'll be in touch, but it's tough when you've become used to something, and at some point you have to be an adult about things, and I got really scared about the notion of going down and being on my feet so much and screwing up things, and if I did have a premature sense of healing, and then knocking New York Comic Con out of the trajectory. But New York Comic Con is something else we have to talk about, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But speaking of cons, I did recently attend another con, which was FlameCon, which is put on by our friends at Geeks Out. It took place at the Marriott Marquis at Brooklyn Bridge, naturally in Brooklyn, New York. Now, apart from my issues with the feet, another thing that's been a roadblock with me participating more in geekdom over the last couple of months has been that I have been working on a project at work which has, oh my God, it's leveled me in terms of how many billable hours I've been committing to it. I think my record for a week so far has been 67.3. You know, I left the law firm life because I didn't like how many hours I was billing. I traded it for the consulting life, and it's almost as bad, but it's, fits and starts. So I didn't want to have any kind of commitment because last year I co-hosted a panel at FlameCon with our friend Chris Cummins where we presented Matthew Waterhouse, who played Adric on Doctor Who, and had a much more active role last year. This year, I had to reel it back, so I only went to the con one of the 2 days. But it's a great show. Met a lot of people for the first time, like Mark Andraco. I re-met some other people like James Tinian the Fourth, who I had a great conversation with. So our friend Cena Gray spent a good amount of time with him. Zan Christensen from Northwest Press, Brian Bassett of Square Bears. Met for the first time Justin Hall, who was a sweetheart, and we're going to have him on the show fairly soon. I'm sure there's people I'm forgetting, but they put a great LGBT themed show on there. I did attend one panel, which was the panel regarding Love is Love, which had many of the same people that we talked about. Also T. Franklin, who Steve particularly adores, and also Phil Jimenez, who's always a great presence at these cons. So congrats, guys, again for FlameCon, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you at 2018. And in regards to cons, let's talk a little bit about New York Comic Con, which is coming up in the first week of October. Now, there's not going to be any official Comic Book Bears presence, again, because of my work commitments. I wasn't able to put something in the mix. But that doesn't mean that the Comic Book Bears podcast family is not going to be represented at this show. As you know, in the past we have done shows for what was previously known as Super Week, which is now known as NYCC Presents, which are a series of shows that take place around the convention. And we're doing it again. And the first one is hosted by our absent brother Bryan, which is going to be on October 3rd. And this is going to be under the banner of his other podcast, Flame On Live. October 3rd, 2017 at 8 p.m. at Rock Bar down in Greenwich Village. Your favorite gay and geeky podcast travels north of the Mason-Dixon line to bring their unique take on pop culture to Rock Bar as they get ready for New York Comic Con. Join Bryan the Bear and Pat the Talking Bearskin Rug as they bring interviews with special guests, one-of-a-kind games with prizes and giveaways, and even a few sing-alongs thrown in for good measure. So come on, join us. I'll certainly be there for a night of fun and get ready to flame on. Bryan and myself will also be judges at the 4th annual Doctor Who Costume and Trivia Contest. That's taking place the following night on October 4th at 8 p.m. at the Way Station in Brooklyn. Now in its 4th year at the Way Station, the Doctor Who Costume Trivia Contest is a celebration of all eras of Who, hosted by Chris Cummins and featuring a universe of prizes and special guests. This event features a contest in which audience members battle it out to see who has the greatest Who trivia knowledge. Then the costume contest portion of the evening puts your cosplay skills to the test to see who is the best dressed Doctor, companion, and alien from the series. Lastly, on Friday night, veering a little bit away from the comic and geek content, but it's still pretty geeky, I will be part of the Music Video Book Club on October 6th, again at Rock Bar at 8 p.m. 4 guests, 10 music videos, no Survivor. Music Video Book Club is a comic video event in which host Chris Cummins, familiar name, and his panel of comedians and music experts. I'm one of the two. Watch a number of music videos from the amazing to the awful and share their opinions. The catch, the panel will only know half of the videos they will see ahead of time in order to form detailed opinions on what they've seen. The remaining videos will come as a complete shock to the panel, and Cummins has plumbed the sometimes demented and depraved depths of videodom to highlight some of the craziest clips ever made. What results will be an evening of musical madness that is best described as the bastard offspring of MST3K and TRL Live. How'd I get myself involved in this? But I'll be part of that. Again, that is Music Video Book Club on October 6, 2017 at Rock Bar. This is going to be, I believe, my 9th or 10th New York Comic Con. I have to check.
That's a good number.
It's been a while now. I want to say, oh, God, maybe 2008 or so was my first. I didn't go the first 2 years. I did not go the first 2 years. I went the first time on the third year that they had it, so I'll have to take a look. And Steve went last year for his first time, and hopefully that won't be his only time. You know, at some point we'll all get together at a con and have fun at the con and afterwards.
That would be fun. I actually, just to kind of go back to some of the events there, the great thing about the Flame On show that I know you've taken part of in the past is that they do put it online afterwards. So if you haven't had a chance to get out to New York Comic Con or to the NYCC Presents, to the events at Rock Bar, they usually do put them up within a couple weeks or a month or so. Mm-hmm. So you get to hear all the fun stuff, although you cannot get those prizes, which I know they do get some good prizes. So that would be fun. Sadly, I'll be missing again this year. Mm-hmm. But also that music video battle thing. I'm just, knowing Chris Cummins a little bit, I'm wondering if he's just been able to find 10 different Pizzicato 5 videos, and he's just going to force you all to watch them.
I don't know what I'm in for. I really don't.
I mean, I'm sure he's going to be fair. He's going to throw in some.
I'm also just wondering, like one thing that was going through my head is like, what is my favorite video of all time? If that's something that comes up.
It's probably something from Madonna, I'm sure.
No, it's not Madonna. It's not Madonna. What
was the theme song for Masters of the Universe? Because that's it. That's mine.
Whatever. I believe my favorite video, I'd have to think about this a little bit more, is the video for Vienna by Ultravox. Very early on in the game, 1980 video. But what they did with the medium, while it was in its infancy, there's some images that will stay with me my entire life from that video. And I think it's that. I have to think long and hard. I don't go for jokey videos. Oh. OK Go doesn't do anything for me. They're clever for 2 watchings and then I'm bored. I'd have to think if there's anything that really tops Vienna for what I like to get out of video.
But anyway, moving on from music videos, I think we have some comics to talk about. Maybe just a couple.
Yeah, just a couple. Again, we just wanted to get this quick episode out. This is basically like Pearl Jam first album, I'm Still Alive sentimentality that we're sending out to you. Just to let you know that, we're still here and we're going to revert to as close as we can to a bi-weekly podcast as soon as we can. And hopefully when October hits, we'll get everything back in line. But we already talked to you about that. So let's talk about comics. Steve, tell us something you're reading.
Well, a lot of people know that the new DC event, Dark Knights or Metal, has started as of last month, and it's continuing through September. With, of course, the main Metal series, which I think just had its second issue, but also starting to get some tie-ins. Now, they're doing these one-shot tie-ins, very similar, I actually really enjoy, very similar to things they've done in the past, but also the way that Valiant does their tie-ins for their events, where they just have a one-shot of a character or an event that's part of this storyline. You don't have to be, following everything. It doesn't necessarily follow in a pure chronological order. It just is something that you can read as a supplement or not, and you're not going to get anything different or anything crazy out of it. There's some nice tie-ins or some nice, backstory information that you're going to get, but you don't have to read it to be able to enjoy the rest of the event. And so what I did was I picked up Dark Knight's Batman the Red Death, #1. And of course, Batman the Red Death, one of the things that happens at the end of Dark Knight's Metal #2 is that all of these Dark Universe versions of Batman explode through the gateway that Bruce Wayne opens. So, you get to see glimpses of all these different Batmen that are all versions of Bruce Wayne who have somehow or other taken on aspects of different members of the Justice League. And so Red Death is the Flash Batman. And Batman the Red Death issue #1 basically is the origin of the Red Death or the Flash Batman. And it's very interesting, very intriguing. Josh Williamson was writing it, and of course Carmine D.G. Oh God, I'm gonna butcher it. D. Giandomenico was on art duties here. It is Wild Trip. It's very interesting because they kind of put it together. The Dark Universe, of course, is like the worst possible outcome or the worst possible version of, all of the different versions of Earth. So, of course, horrible things happen. People make terrible decisions, and things end very poorly for everybody. And that's just kind of the general feel of what the Dark Universe offers, the DC Universe. But in this one, it takes place on Earth 52, presumably Dark Earth 52, where the red skies are coming, of course. And so, the world is ending, and the Flash and Batman are trying to find a way to save it. Unfortunately, Batman's made the decision that what he needs to do is steal the Speed Force from Barry Allen and take his power. And somehow that's going to help him save Gotham City and, of course, then the world. This does not really work out the way that he's hoping it does, in a very gruesome way. This comic does not pull any punches. It does really show you exactly how horrifying the events in the Dark Universe can be to some of these characters. And of course, as we saw at the end of Metal #2, this version of Batman, the evil Red Death Flash Batman version, does come into the main DC universe and starts spreading some chaos. So it's very intriguing. It's really cool. It does, of course, have one of those, special covers that we got so used to seeing in the 90s. I was kind of hoping that they would sort of stop running these, although it does look really nice. Oh, something's loud. Okay, let me go back. It does have one of those sort of incentive covers where it's really flashy, foil embossed, whatever that we'd like to see in the 90s. Whatever. It's pretty. It doesn't cost any more than, I guess, normal cover.
One thing I do love about those covers, though, is I love the paper stock for the
yeah.
cover. I always loved having something sturdy. I'm just thinking of some other books that kind of mind that without the gimmick, like Superman, Batman, and just having a sturdier paper stock for the cover. I enjoy that.
Yeah, the thing is, Valiant's been doing that a lot lately with a lot of their main titles. So that's it's very similar to that. So it was kind of interesting when I went to go pick up just a couple books at the local comic shop here in Winston, and almost all of them have the cardstock covers, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, so Batman the Red Death, it's an interesting tie-in. It kind of gives you the origin of the evil Flash Batman. So if you're interested in finding out a little bit more about the background of these evil versions that are pouring through into the normal DC universe, definitely give it a go. It's not mandatory. If you're not into spending a whole bunch of extra money for pretty flashy covers on event books, you don't have to worry about whether you miss it or not. So, but yeah, it's interesting, and of course, I'm a fan of Di Giandomenico, if I can say that properly. I've enjoyed his other work. So, yeah, that's one of the books that I read this week.
Okay. Well, let me take out a book that I read this week. And I have been in DC World for so long, I needed a break. So I went to a stalwart publisher that is not Marvel, that has been around almost as long as those two. I went to Archie Comics. And the book I'm talking about is Archie Comics number 23, written by Mark Waid, and this is the first issue with new artist Audrey Mock. And if you have been following what's been going on in the monthly Archie title, one of the principal characters in the Archie universe, in this version of the Archie universe, had a change. I don't want to give too much away because they haven't been very explicit about what's been going on from the covers. You just know something heavy has gone down with one of the main characters. The thing that I initially liked about the Wade run with Archie was if you had redrawn the Archie stories that he was providing in the classic Stan Goldberg, Dan DeCarlo style, you wouldn't have batted an eye. It works on this more realistic level with the art, but it would also work on a classic Archie. With the last story arc, things got a bit more serious. And this is the first story in the new arc where they start dealing with something that has not only affected the people we know in Archie's group, but basically the entire town. And you can interpret it as a done in one. There are things spread out through the issue where you can see seeds are being planted about some developments that might happen with some of the other main characters like Reggie. This book gave me the feels in two parts. And it's so hard for me to talk about this without spoiling. God, it's so hard. If you want a little bit of a choke in the throat, you're going to go to the last page of this book. Even through hardship and uncertainty, there's hope. And I think that's what Riverdale, in a sense, embodies, apart from the vibe that's on the CW show. I think the classic Archie environs of Riverdale present that. It's a place where a gay character like Kevin Keller can be accepted, where there is racial equality, and it's just unquestioned because it's through a lens of, I don't want to say naivete, but of optimism. And you get that sense here in a very simple action, and it's really lovely. So Archie 23.
And that's pretty interesting that you went and read an Archie title, because I think now that the new TV season is upon us, and we've been getting a lot more Riverdale information. Of course, they also just mentioned that Sabrina is going to be getting her own TV show again. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be along the same lines as a Riverdale reboot, where it's a lot darker, a lot more serious, and yes, there is magic and supernatural on it, which is kind of interesting. But it's such a different feel from the comics, and I like you said, the Mark Waid run was great, and that's where I was really reading a lot of Archie, because it updated Archie, but it still maintained all of that same feel of what you come to expect with an Archie book. Yes, everything's still a little bit more modernized, and the language has changed a little bit, and yes, there's some heavy stuff that can happen, but
yeah, and the first time we've had continuity.
Yeah, continuity, really, which is great.
In the main book. I mean, the only time you had that really extended previously was The Married Life.
Yeah, that Life with Archie sort of tie-in book or related book. But yeah, it's interesting, and I kind of still like that about the comics, even though I have I've kind of fallen off from reading my Archies and my Jugheads. But yeah, with the show, it's an interesting counterbalance to the show. If you like the comics, you will still probably like the show, and vice versa, even though they have very different feels. So, yeah, but that's cool. I haven't even thought about Reggie.
You got something else you want to talk about?
I do. Just one more book, and I got I actually went to Marvel for this one. It's not a Valiant book. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, where's your Valiant book for this week?" I did. Exactly. Well, Bloodshot Salvation came out this week, but I'm not going to be talking about that one. Maybe some other time. But Runaways #1 was released recently, and this one, I don't know if anybody had read the original runs of Runaways. Of course, Joss Whedon was a writer at one point, and Brian Michael Bendis, but I think Bendis was on it.
I don't know.
Maybe he wasn't on it. Maybe I'm thinking somebody else. But
it was Brian K. Vaughan that created it.
Brian K. Vaughan, that's what it was. Well, not Brian Bendis. I've got Bendis on the brain. But yeah, BKV, of course, started the original series of Runaways. Joss Whedon took over at some point in the middle of it. There were several other writers. Was Jeff Loeb on there as well? I know we were talking about Jeff a little bit earlier.
I don't think so.
I can't remember.
I honestly do not think he touched that. I mean, and I know that there have been a writer and artist personnel that aren't immediately coming to mind because there were things like the crossover series with Young Avengers through the bigger events like Civil War and stuff. So I really don't know that. I know Catherine Imonen. Terry Moore was on it at one point. But I think Whedon was the first after Vaughn, just because he was a huge fan of the series.
Yeah, but I can't remember who the third, because there was basically like 3 main writers on this and a couple of.
I'm pretty sure that when they had the 2008 series, I'm pretty sure that was Terry Moore, because Terry Moore has not done much work for the big two.
Interesting.
So that was some news there.
And it's funny because when I read this originally, I actually was able to get the original digest size trades, so I was able to read them pretty quick, which was great. But it's been a hot minute since there was a Runaways title, other than like an event tie-in. I think there was a Runaways for Secret Wars, if I can remember, the latest Secret Wars. But this one it's a brand new full title for Runaways, written by Rainbow Rowell. Interesting name, hard to say, 5 times fast. And of course Chris Anka on art duties, along with Matt Wilson for colors. But it's an interesting start to this series, because of course it starts with Nico Minoru all alone. And it talks about how, gives a quick summary of who the Runaways were, what they were, and now, of course, they're gone, they're done, they're over with because of, a lot of tragic things happened to them along the way. A couple characters died, there was a traitor among them, there's, all sorts of things that happened. And that was before they got spun off into different series. And thrown onto different teams or into different books, or just kind of disappeared. But this series, of course, hopes to bring them back together again, and we'll see how well that happens. Rowell, of course, is crafting that story. So far with the first issue, really gets you involved in 3 of the characters: Chase, Nico, and of course Gertrude or Arsenic. And it's interesting. I actually it really gives a great explanation of Nico's abilities, which I always think is one of the more, as a character, I think she has one of the more interesting power sets, in that she's a magic user, but she has to cut herself in order to pull a giant magic staff out of her chest. She can use spells to do anything, but she can only use a spell once, and then she can never use it again. It's a crazy power, and I really think that Rainbow did a good job writing her. So we'll see if she can continue that. But yeah, it's an interesting first issue, an interesting sort of first step into the greater story. Of course, sets up a possible villain who doesn't show up until like the second to last page, and of course gets the first three of the Runaways together, and of course there's a couple other Runaways they need to find, hopefully to bring the band back together in the next few issues. But yeah, I would actually recommend this if you love the first original series or any of the other series, well, not series, but any of the other story arcs or their appearances in other titles. I would recommend picking this one up.
Okay. My next trip over to the spinner rack is, I'm going to go a little bit past the spinner rack to the magazine section. Is that okay, Steve?
Magazines, crazy.
Yeah. And the magazine, which is connected to comic graphics that I'm going to be talking about, is the latest issue of Heavy Metal Magazine, issue number 287. I think this is about the seventh or eighth book in the Morrison edited era of heavy metal. And with this particular issue, it's bannered as a music special, so we literally have heavy metal in heavy metal. And it's a series of stories inspired by various acts, including Iron Maiden, Nine Inch Nails, Rob Zombie, Gojira, Ozzy Osbourne, Motley Crue, Marilyn Manson, In Flames, Vamps, and Hollywood Undead. I think I got the entirety there of the bands represented. And it's a series of stories, and I don't want to say just stories, because some of them are basically just graphic interpretations of various works associated with these bands. Among these is a preview of Legacy of the Beast, which is going to be a 5-issue miniseries put out by Heavy Metal, which basically tells the story of Eddie, who was Iron Maiden's mascot. My favorite entry in here, I have to say, is the Coma White story based on a song by Marilyn Manson. It's by Richard Carty, Menton, and Adam Wallet. It has a very distinctive, think like goth Alex Ross,
Huh.
which probably is Bill Sienkiewicz, now that I come to think about it. But it covers a lot of inventive terrain within the confines of only 4 or 5 pages. So if you can find this and can part with the $8.95, my God, I think I remember when heavy metal was like $1.50. You could do worse than going to issue number 287, the music special issue of heavy metal. So we're going to wrap this very abbreviated episode of the Comic Book Bears up. But before we do, we're not going to let you down. We're going for our traditional final segment, which is the Woofs of the Week segment, where we spotlight something, be it a comic book or a TV show or a film or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think that you, fair listener, may be interested in sampling. So, Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, my whiff of the week, of course, is TV related, and this time, though, it is not comic book related or action or sci-fi. It is a very pleasant and quaint way to spend an hour, and that's the Great British Bake Off, which is back, at this time, on Channel 4 in the UK. Obviously, there was a lot of concern that it wouldn't be as good or that things would change a little too much when it left the BBC at the end of last year. In fact, 3 of the hosts, 2 of the hosts and 1 of the judges, ended up leaving as well. So the only one who's the holdover is Paul Hollywood, and I know that a certain co-host really loves Mr. Paul Hollywood and his blue eyes. But yeah, there you go. But the new hosts, Sandy Toksvig and Neil. Oh my God, I just forgotten his name. Noel Fielding, sorry, not Neil Fielding, Noel Fielding, as well as new judge Prue, and Prue, who I've loved on the Great British Menu for years. It's wonderful to see her in this context too. And one of the fun facts about Prue that you might not know is that she writes romance novels. In fact, sometimes very racy romance novels. So she and Paul have a great rapport, and Paul can't say anything to embarrass her. In fact, Paul's been the one who's gotten the red face a lot more often than not this year, because Prue's been throwing some sexual innuendos his way. which is a lot of fun to watch. Contestants are really great this year. There's a cutie who's also pretty awesome named Steven, and some other wonderful bakers that are just so much fun to watch, and everything's great. Yeah, if you like this kind of show, definitely give it a look. The new season of the Great British Bake Off, which I think is season 8. I don't know what it is in PBS land, but if you can get a hold of this series or this year, definitely watch it as soon as you can.
Yeah, I was trying to think of where I knew Noel Fielding from, and if you ever watched Nevermind the Buzzcocks, he was
Yep.
almost
Yep.
every time was one of the team captains on there.
Oh
And
yeah.
in being the rock guy that I am, there's a great video by the band Kasabian called Vlad the
Mm-hmm.
Impaler, where Noel plays the title character Vlad the Impaler, and you might want to
He's
search
been
that
in a
up.
couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in a couple music videos.
Yeah.
And I think his brother, I believe, is a DJ. If you've also seen him in TV, he was in the Mighty Boosh. He was also in the IT Crowd as the guy who lives in the IT closet. And he also had his own TV series for a while, which was absurdist sketch comedy called Luxury Comedy.
Hmm.
But yeah, he's actually a lot of fun. And Sandy Tuxvig is she's all right.
Okay. Well, my wolf of the week is more comics oriented, and I'm going to send that out to Classic Phantom Lady Volume 1 Collected Works from PS Art Books. PS Art Books is an imprint that collects Golden Age comics, mostly in the public domain, in high quality slipcase efforts, but also in paperbacks. And I got this through paperback. Phantom Lady is a character that was created in 1941, was part of the Quality Comics stable, which also included Plastic Man and Black Hawk. This imprint, Quality Comics, was later, I don't want to say absorbed by DC Comics, but DC Comics purchased a lot of their properties around 1956. Didn't do much with them until the 70s, where they did create a superhero team based around the principal characters from Quality Comics called the Freedom Fighters. And Sandra Knight, who is the Phantom Lady, was one of those members. If you were a reader of Starman, you'll know that Sandy Knight was Ted Knight's cousin, and there have been various iterations of Phantom Lady. One of the earliest examples, I would say, of good girl art in comics, probably around the same time as Sheena, probably just a little bit after. The thing that's really struck me was how good some of the art was, because sometimes you hit Golden Age stories and there's, of course there are, some artists whose work was unbelievable, like Macra Boy and Matt Baker, just you wouldn't necessarily feel out of place reading in contemporary comics. But there were these two artists that I really was not that familiar with, Frank Borth and Arthur Petty. Also among the artists in the stories that are collected in this volume is some of the earliest work by Joe Kubert. So that's my wolf of the week. I needed a little bit of a golden age chaser after modern day some modern day shots. That's what I went to. Phantom Lady. Actually, the title, Roy Thomas Presents Classic Phantom Lady, Volume 1, the paperback version from PS Art Books. Hey everybody, this is Bill Zanowitz punching in with an additional Wolf of the Week, and this wolf is courtesy of my friend Len O'Grady. Len is a comic book inker whose work you may be familiar with from various projects at IDW and at 2000 AD, and he is part of the Kickstarter for the Captain Freedom Combat Hate comic book. Captain Freedom is a Golden Age era character, originally appeared in Harvey Comics in the early 1940s, has since fallen into the public domain, and now comic book creators Dan Taylor and DJ Kaufman are collaborating as small press publisher Keep Left to independently publish a new comic book featuring Captain Freedom. The title Hero Captain Freedom is the publisher of the Daily Bulletin newspaper and is known for fighting Nazi villains and thwarting Axis saboteurs with the aid of a number of children known as the Young Defenders. This all-new Captain Freedom comic book will feature an original story by the aforementioned writers and focus on a redesigned look for the superhero in an alternative timeline set after the Second World War, one that is reminiscent of our very own past, while eerily similar to our own current time. In addition to the main story, the comic book will include backup material featuring work from some very well-known comic book creators, including Bo Smith, J.K. Woodard, Gordon Purcell, Phil Hester, and many, many more. You can go directly to captain-freedom.com, which will take you right to the Kickstarter page. And the campaign for the Kickstarter runs until October 6th. So check it out and please consider contributing. Well, again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast, your hairy, heavy homos who read comics and talk to you about them. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. If you want to listen to us, you can subscribe to us through iTunes and also access us through Stitcher Radio. And if you want to reach out to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. So until next time, I'm Billy Z.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Woof!
saw blade where I should have had a heart.
You kept your boat afloat for so long.
I was trusted, I adored her, and I tore it all apart.
I saw you try and stop the sunset on your own. Twin moons on the milk pond.
From a tumble down bar,
forever wrought in ancient silver gravity.
I can still taste the heat of the sun on her skin in my arms.
I could fall to the cold of these January streams.
Keep a hand around the fickle flame of morning after.
Your smile in the half-light was pure pillow print cheese.
An angel tangled in the very cloths of heaven.